Alright, so in my hypothetical classroom, I'm teaching third grade, and in my third grade class, I have three emergent bilingual students who are native Spanish speakers, but who now are learning English. And the book that I chose to base my lesson on is called Here We Are, Notes for Living on Planet Earth by Oliver Jeffers. And I just really love this book. I feel that it's really appropriate for English language learners because, first of all, I really just love its message of diversity and acceptance, and just that all people are different, but that we're all part of a community. And I just really love that idea. I feel that that's important to teach, especially in a classroom where students are learning English and may feel that lack of acceptance, and it helps other students to recognize the role that they have in creating an accepting and loving community. I also just really love the illustrations in the book, and I feel like that they're just very, very useful in helping students to be able to create meaning. They're very detailed, but they're also broad in the ideas that they're presenting, and so students can draw on their own background knowledge to create meaning, even just from the pictures. I also love that it covers such a broad, a variety of topics that could then be related to other objectives and standards from the core. So in my lesson, I would choose to probably begin with a picture walk, which would just include going through the book and looking at the different pictures, and having students share ideas and meaning that they're able to create just from the pictures alone. And then I would also want to have them have the opportunity to be able to discuss the meaning that they're creating from the book, whether that be in pairs or small groups or as a class as a whole, kind of depending on the comfort level of the students. Another activity that I think would be beneficial for this particular book, the book shows several different, I guess, like maps of like an illustration and then pointing out specific parts. So like in this one you can see that they're pointing out specific parts of the body. There's another one where they point out parts of the solar system or parts of different landforms or ecosystems. And so I think that this could be useful for students to create their own maps of sorts, to continue to build on that meaning making and identifying things that are around them. So I think that these activities, all of them really relate to Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, in that we're going to meet the student where they are at with the language. So if they can only understand things through pictures, then that's great. Or if they are beyond that and they can understand more of the words, whatever it may be, we're going to provide them with the tools that they need to be able to make meaning from this book. I think that that also the aspect of language being a social thing really relates to Vygotsky, and the discussion activity really relates to that. In order to really make meaning, students are going to be able to need to express their own ideas as well as listen to the ideas of their peers as far as meaning that's being drawn from the book. I think that another way that the activities relate, especially the mapping activity, really relates to Saussure's ideas related to the signifier and the signified. In class we were given the word bird, but every student came up with their own mental image of the word bird, and I think that the mapping activity allows for students to recognize that there are going to be differences in the way that we think about and create meaning, but that those ideas can be shared in a community, so that the meaning can still be shared regardless of the word or the mental image being exactly the same. And so I think that that's really important. Another thing that I think is important with the mapping is that translanguaging or code switching could be implemented in that activity, that students could have the opportunity to label things that they know in English, but also label things that maybe they don't yet know the word for in English, but they could label it in their native language. I think that that's a good opportunity and time for them to use translanguaging. So there are, of course, some challenges that could come with these activities. One thing that immediately came to mind, particularly with the discussion, excuse me, is the level of comfort that students have in expressing themselves in front of groups. So I would just want to be very conscious of how students feel in their I guess confidence in expressing themselves, and would pair students accordingly. So whether that meant that they were sharing in pairs, perhaps even with someone who spoke the same native language as they did, or in small groups, or in front of the whole class. And probably if they were presenting in front of the whole class, I would want to make sure that I provided them with additional time to think about what they were going to say, so they weren't just put on the spot. Another challenge that I thought of could be that the book could seem almost overwhelming with information, because it does cover such a wide variety of topics, and so I might choose to just focus on just maybe a couple of pages at a time to kind of introduce topics, so that students aren't overwhelmed with like a fire hose of information in their face with new words that seem to relate to different topics. But yeah, overall I think that's it, and I think that there are lots of ways that children's literature can be helpful in teaching ELL students, and so I'm excited to implement these things in my future classroom.